What you just witnessed is a community-driven game mode within Counter-Strike known as KREEDz, or as it's more commonly called, KZ. This game mode emphasizes a completely different set of skills than traditional Counter-Strike gameplay. Rather than team-based combat, KZ focuses on the skillful navigation of maps which are designed to test a player's movement. These are called KZ maps and feature complex jumps and other movement challenges such as BHOP blocks, slide sections, ladder jumps, and more. They emphasize speed, accuracy, and timing of user inputs. Each of these maps feature a start and stop button at their respective ends, and just like in any other speedrunning game, the goal is to complete the map as fast as possible. Now, odds are that if you've played KZ in recent years, it was in CSGO, so let's quickly point out some of the differences between CSGO and 1.6 movement mechanics. When Valve was developing the original Counter-Strike, they realized that players were heavily abusing a bug known as bunny hopping, which is the act of stringing together jump commands while air strafing to continuously gain speed. To combat this unintentional mechanic, Valve would implement a couple of systems into the final release of Counter-Strike that were designed to slow a player's movement. One of them is the stamina system. This system influences how high you jump and is determined by a value known as fuser2, which increases with consecutive jumps. This of course heavily impacts b-hopping in general and traversing up blocks vertically. To combat this height penalty while in a b-hop sequence, 1.6 KZers will utilize a mechanic known as a stand-up bunny hop, or an SBJ, which involves tapping the crouch key while b-hopping just before hitting the ground. Without getting into specifics, this lessens the height penalty introduced by the stamina system and is a vital tool in any 1.6 KZer's arsenal. Take a look at this clip of Topo Vigus on a map called HB Drop Zone. In the right-hand corner, you will see which keys are being pressed. As you can see, he's hitting his crouch key quite often. If he wasn't, then comboing all of these blocks like this just wouldn't be possible due to a lack of height. Another system Valve implemented to slow movement is the ground friction system. For every frame spent on the ground following a jump, your player will experience a frictional force applied to them, which of course slows them down. Meaning, if you are b-hopping and your plus jump command isn't performed on the exact frame in which your feet touch the floor, you will experience ground friction for each following frame spent on the ground. Take a look at this clip where I am not b-hopping at all. As you can see, I lose the majority of my walk speed upon landing. This is the ground friction system in action. To combat this, KZers will utilize the game's duck mechanic. But how would ducking help combat the ground friction? Well, in CS 1.6, quickly sending a duck command rather than holding it will result in your character gaining some height. Sending another duck command while still in the air from your first duck will pull your legs even further up. This is known as double ducking. This is an important detail relative to ground friction because your player can only experience this friction when they are actually on the ground. So for example, look at this clip. I'm bunny hopping away and comboing all of these blocks until I make it to this one. If I landed on the very edge of this block, it would be easy. Just continue b-hopping to the next block, but I didn't get a good edge. I landed all the way back here, so clearing this distance with a b-hop is a bit too far for me. If this was CSGO, I could simply land on this block, immediately start walking at full speed, and simply jump to the next block. Trying that in 1.6 would result in me hitting the ground, losing most of my speed, and failing the jump. While I could just land on the block, wait a split second for my stamina to recover, and continue, this would lose me time. So instead what I can do here is send a duck command with my scroll wheel, which will put me in the air for a short amount of time, allowing me to get a better edge on the block, which then makes it easier to clear this gap with a b-hop, all while avoiding ground friction. This is known as a count jump. There are many other differences between CSGO and 1.6 movement mechanics, but covering them all in detail would take forever. Just remember that while the goal in 1.6 KZ is the same, its actual mechanics differ quite a bit. With all of that being said, for most people, KZ is just a game mode in CSGO that they would casually play while waiting for their ESEA or FACEIT queue to pop. But for others, it's a full-fledged speedrunning game mode with its own leaderboards. Just like in traditional speedrunning games, this niche community has its GOATs. And when it comes to KZ, I'd argue that there was no one greater than Luli. Luli is a highly regarded Swedish KZer, who regardless of what era he was playing in, would display a level of skill that would not look out of place several years into the future. No other player would single-handedly have as much impact on the skill ceiling of top KZers as he did, exemplified by the fact that, although he hasn't played 1.6 KZ in over a decade, many of his previous records have only recently been beaten. As a result, Luli's times continue to act as a benchmark for new KZers even to this day. But before we go any further, you should know that record keeping is also different in 1.6 KZ. In 1.6, world record runs are dictated by a team of people from a community known as Extreme-Jumps, or XJ. This community acts as a central hub for 1.6 KZ by conducting interviews with top KZers and creating KZ-related videos, but most importantly, keeping a leaderboard of world record times on KZ maps that they deem to be of high quality. These runs must be done on LAN, recorded via Counter-Strike's built-in demo system, and then sent to XJ, where it is verified by a team member known as a demo checker and added to that week's demo release. It's important to note that there are other groups like XJ that keep their own leaderboards, such as KZ Rush and Cozy Climbing, but XJ is the most competitive for a variety of reasons. As a result, the XJ leaderboard is akin to CS:GO KZ's global leaderboard. In other words, if you are number 1 on Extreme-Jumps, you are number 1 in the world. Luli would set his first Extreme-Jumps record back in 2007 on a map called KZ Pac-Man. Although the run wasn't perfect, it showed a level of skill that seemed years ahead of its time. So much so that someone watching it without context might think it was from between 2010 and 2012. Sure enough, when you look at his other runs from that time, you'll see people who couldn't believe what they were seeing. For example, if you look at some of the comments on Luli's 2008 run of Pro Challenge BHOP, you will see people doubting that this run was really performed by Luli, claiming that there was no way it could be from 2008, or just outright calling it fake. While all these people are wrong, you can't really blame them because Luli was just playing at a level that was yet to be seen up to that point. To be completely honest, people just weren't that good at KZ yet, so when they saw Luli playing like this in 2008, they didn't really know what to think. And although it's not hard to find anecdotes of people claiming to see Luli casually smashing server records set by top KZers, he would remain somewhat of an enigma, only setting a handful of world records and staying relatively unknown. Although Luli had the skill set of a top player, he didn't have the results to back it up, and it seemed like it would remain this way, judging by the fact that at the end of 2008, Luli chose to take a several-year break from KZ entirely. Normally, when a runner takes a break in the realm of speedrunning, other top runners will surpass them as the game and its community evolve. For example, in 2016, Darbian set a time of 456.878 in the Super Mario Bros. Any percent category. While at the time this was an impressive world record, in 2023, that same time would put you at 51st place on the leaderboard. And remember, when it comes to Luli, he only even set 4 world records, so technically speaking, he wasn't even a top runner. The odds of him returning to any sort of success were quite low. And sure enough, during Luli's several-year leave, new strategies were discovered, techniques were refined, and most importantly, an influx of motivated new runners shifted the skill ceiling dramatically. Sure, Luli was years ahead of his time in 2008, but that was before a new generation of top KZers like Shins, Kelta, and Cuckoos started setting records. Nonetheless, Luli would make his return to KZ in 2012, with a couple of runs on an infamous map known as J2S 4 Tunnels. For reference, the previous record on J2S 4 Tunnels was set by Pizza at 3 minutes and 21 seconds. And although this run had a mistake in it, many were still considering it Run of the Year, because while the map isn't necessarily difficult to complete, actually setting a top time on it can be agonizing due to its various technical aspects. 4 Tunnels has everything from crouched BHOP sections, ladder jumps, awkward slide sections, headbangers, and everything in between. Pizza himself would even state, "I don't think this map will ever have a near-flawless run." Then, Luli smashed his world record after several years of inactivity with a near-flawless run.
Dread of the days
Xtreme-Jumps has a weekly feature known as Run of the Week, which is exactly what it sounds like. And that week, there was no doubt about who deserved the spotlight, as giving ROTW to anybody other than Luli for his run on 4 tunnels would be absurd, proven by the fact that this would later go on to be the most viewed run of the week uploaded to the Xtreme-Jumps YouTube page. But like I said earlier, the odds of a speedrunner returning to any kind of success after such a break are very low, so perhaps his comeback was just a couple lucky runs on a specialized map. Well, a few months later, he would silence any doubters with a series of large WR demo submissions to XJ. First on December 3rd with 24 world records, then on the 17th with 18 world records, and finally, on the 23rd of December 2012, with a 30 world record submission, Luli took the #1 spot on XJ for his first time ever. In a matter of just a few months, and after years of inactivity, Luli had gone from having 0 active world records to holding the most prestigious spot in KZ with 73. Surprisingly, he did all of this with a slightly more relaxed playstyle compared to other KZers, choosing to excel through consistent execution of the entire moveset rather than just excessively grinding away at 1 or 2 mechanics. So while Luli wasn't the best at B-hopping, he rarely ever missed a B-hop. And although his strafes weren't visually appealing, they were usually more than enough. This means that comparing his runs to those he beat doesn't reveal a dramatic skill gap, but rather a slight edge in execution, which in turn leads to a dramatic gap in results. Here's an analogy. Putting Luli against other KZers during the 2012 era would be akin to comparing an NBA player to a D1 college basketball player. Sure, if you were to evaluate them independently from each other, you might think that both are playing at the highest level possible. However, if you were to look at the results of them competing against each other, they would rarely ever be close. While there was the occasional exceptional run, such as Shin's 2011 run on KZ Cargo, consistent performances like this, which could stand alongside today's top times, were far and few between. Luli's comeback runs were significant in that they set a new benchmark for what was achievable, showcasing times that actually could rival the best today. For example, let's take a look at the record history for a map like Risk Stargate Hard. In February 2012, the record was a 310 by Kelta. Typically, map records improve by just a second or two at most. However, when Luli ran the map later that same year, he got a 301, beating him by about 9 whole seconds. What makes this even more impressive is the fact that this record would stand for nearly 8 whole years, until Fyksen would finally beat it by less than half a second. And that's not an edge case. There are about 27 records Luli set that wouldn't be beaten for about 7 years or so. If you were looking for evidence of time travel being a reality, Luli is your proof. Luli would hold on to XJ's #1 spot throughout the entirety of 2013, 2014, and most of 2015. While this 3-year run is already impressive, the craziest part of it is that he didn't even submit a single run in 2014 or 2015. Meaning, it took other top KZers 2 entire years to catch up to an inactive Luli. And although he would eventually be surpassed, I'd argue that the grind to even catch up to him is what later made people like Tofifi, Shooting Star, and Shins so good at KZ. Luli's technique, characterized by efficiency rather than flair, and his ability to consistently set records that would last years, indicate a player who not only understood the game's mechanics at a deep level, but also had the technical ability to apply them in ways that were ahead of his time. While Luli might not be seen as the best KZer ever, few have created such a significant gap between themselves and the competition, especially not in such a short time. That's why, at least in my opinion, Luli is the GOAT. If you disagree with me, I'd love to know why in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.